on Monday, the 27th of September 2021. Councillor Green will be joining us shortly. She's just running a little bit late, but we're still on level 2, so we are social distancing and have the Zoom format operating. So please note that this meeting is being recorded, and please keep your microphones off to avoid the background noise unless you are speaking. So again, when we are passing a motion, if we can pause when Debbie puts up the motion and then raise our hands and just hold them there for her, that will be great. So turning to page 4, item 1, apologies. We don't have any apologies for today. So item 2, updates to the interest register. And item 3, declarations of interest. So if you do have any updates, please update them on the register. And if there are any conflicts, please identify them now or as the meeting proceeds. Moving to the confirmation of minutes on page 5, item 2. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 7th of September 2021 be confirmed as true and correct, and 2, that the minutes of the meeting of the Tenders Subcommittee held on the 9th of September 2021, Greymouth Water Reservoirs, Tasman View Civil Works Contract number 2020-21-11 be received and noted. Can I have a mover, please?
I'll be happy to move that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Haddock. And a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Gibson. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions there? No? All those in favour? Please raise your hands. Against? Motion carried. So turning to page 16, status reports of council. I do trust that you have all read. Is there any questions or comments? No? No, okay. That was page 17, sorry. Right. We do have a late item now that we are going to table for today, and that is one that you would have received in your email, the government's 3 water reforms. So we have been collating the feedback from our communities and the reforms and engaging through virtual sessions. Overwhelmingly, the feedback has been against for the reform, and as we have seen, this is the result around the country. At the moment, it's our feedback has closed, and it's 96.7% were against reform. So thank you to the public who have engaged with us throughout this process, and we could not make any decisions on this item today, but we are suggesting that on Wednesday that we do have an extraordinary meeting. So the recommendation is from Councillor Gibson.
We resolve to receive.
Oh, we have to resolve to receive it, sorry, so I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Councillor Gibson, thank you. Are there any questions or comments before we proceed to that? All those in favour? Hands up. Against? Motion carried. Okay, so the recommendation.
So you don't have to do that one, you can do that after the cricket club one.
Okay.
So all we've done there is we just voted to receive the late item.
Yeah. So what we are going to do now is we're going to move the West Coast Cricket Association funding forward, because we have Mr. Brownlee who is waiting to address us on that today. So we'll turn to page 53, and then we're going to go back. So I'll give you a minute to get to page 53.
Done.
All right, we all there?
So you're going to speak first.
So the item is the West Coast Cricket Association funding. Paul, would you like to speak to that for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have had a request it's been a roundabout way that this has come about, and it's effectively came about because we, as council, suggested to the West Coast Cricket Association that they apply to the contestable fund for funding, which was, to be fair, I guess was a surprise to the West Coast Cricket Association, because we have been funding the West Coast Cricket Association every year since 1999, I think. The report is fairly self-explanatory in that I think the original proposal was for the first 5 years of the original lease. And I'm not sure how the continual funding has come about, because we haven't had there's no documentation or resolutions to that effect that we can find. And it's been in annual plans and long-term plans ever since. But with the new lease and council's new policy in relation to funding of clubs should be going through the contestable fund, this has caused a little bit of a surprise, as I said, on the Cricket Clubs Association's behalf, and they have asked the council to reconsider the initial decision, which was to direct them to the contestable fund. So hence the report that's in front of you today.
Okay, so we do have Tim Brownlee here today from the West Coast Cricket to address us. Welcome, Tim. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Worship. Apologise for the lack of videos. So I've got 5 minutes, so I'll get into it. Firstly, the report to council, I'd just like to raise a couple of points in number 4, the background, 4.7. When discussions were held with the Grey District Council staff regarding the new lease, it was noted by myself that there was no reference made of any inclusion of council paying the annual ground mowing fee. When I asked about that, I was told that it did not sit with this department, it was another department. So therefore I assumed that the payment would continue. I mean, as stated in clause 12, firmly puts the obligation on the association to look after the grounds and surrounds of the land. It doesn't state where that should be funded from. 4.9, there was no contemplation of funding beyond this point, and that does not appear to be any agreement beyond this. The previous mayor, CEO and manager of support services were well aware of the payments continuing past 5 years as per the original lease. The ground mowing fee was raised at a number of meetings with either one or some of those persons, and there was never any indication given to the association that it would discontinue. Those meetings were around subletting of the ground and of the Messenger Park lease. Also of note that the increase in cost of the 2021 payment was due to West Coast Cricket Association becoming GST accredited. Therefore, the change was just due to the GST component. So that's all I have to say about that. I'd just like to give the councillors now a bit of a background around the ground, and I note your reluctance in wanting to set a precedent in regard to the maintenance of leased grounds, but every ground should be considered on its merits and what it offers to the community at large. You can't compare the West Coast Cricket Association section of Arthur Fong Park to Marist Rugby or Suburbs Field. Arthur Fong Park's West Coast Cricket Association portion is the equivalent to 3 playing fields and cannot be mowed with a ride-on mower. It takes 4.5 hours with a tractor and mower to mow. This is done weekly during the playing season. Over the past 4 years, West Coast Cricket Association has spent $37,000 replacing its mower and tractor. This was done to comply with current health and safety legislation and to continue providing the required level of playing surface suitable for cricket, which is quite different to rugby. And it's this quality of surface that attracts the public to the ground to practice golf, teach the children to ride bikes in a safe environment, land yachting, model car racing, general walking, impromptu touch games, impromptu cricket games, and especially dog exercising. The ground's a community asset with unrestricted access to the wickets, fields, and practice nets. It's the only one of its type in Blaketown and is well used by the public. The ground attracts considerable amounts of vandalism, mainly caused by motorbikes and cars. 1 kilometre fencing was placed around the ground to eliminate this. As soon as it was put up, the wires were cut. As soon as we fix it, they're cut again. And the damage to the turf has to be repaired. Now they're even stealing the posts. Each artificial wicket on that ground, each mat of that wicket on those wickets is worth $7,000, and motorbikes have continued to damage this. if council stops the payment of the mowing fee, which in reality is a ground maintenance fee, then all costs of ground maintenance will be funded through an unknown amount from the contestable fund and senior player subscriptions. We're not knowing what the contestable fund will fund. It's very hard. It will be very hard for budgeting and subsetting because all this happens before we would know what the contestable amount was. The lease requires the West Coast Cricket Association to maintain the ground and its surrounds and have it available to the public for public use, yet has no way of levying the non-cricketing public for that use. Therefore, they are not contributing to the ground's maintenance, but they still get the use of it. My recommendation to council would be that they opt for option one, to continue paying for the ground lease for the oncoming year and come to a settlement after that. And this way, there's no detriment to West Coast Cricket or any obligation on the council going further forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'll pass on now for a recommendation from Councillor Becker.
Okay, the recommendation is 1, the report West Coast Cricket Association funding be received, and 2, council approves the funding of $2,000 out of the discretionary fund for this year only, with the balance requested to go to the contestable fund.
So you will note that that motion has slightly changed. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, I'll second that one, actually. I'll second that. Derry, have you got that, please? Are there any more questions or comments? Councillor McBride? You good?
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed in this one for the fact that, like Tim's just outlined, it's used by a hell of a lot of the community. It's such a massive area to cover. And for council to be putting only $2,000 into that and directing them to that other fund, I just don't agree. We can't compare the likes of Jellyman Park and those others. You're talking 2 football fields compared to about 16. I think for that small fee, I know myself personally, I've been down there with a golf club. My kids go down there and fly kites. I've seen multiple families down there at any given time. They don't get any assistance from the some of the other sports that use it. And I just feel that it's more than just a cricket ground. This cricketing on the West Coast is a growth sport. Same with soccer, which is another one that uses those facilities. And I feel that we should be the health and well-being supporting that in our community like we do with some other areas in the town. So I'm opposing that recommendation. I think we should be funding the lot. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, hi. Look, I've got to go along the same lines as Patrick on that, but so I would prefer an amendment where there was some mention that we could, in fact, if we didn't want to create a precedent, which seems to be the overriding reason, so that we wouldn't give it to every club that applied, would that be a suitable solution that we have, because they do provide that service, they actually become our preferred contractor for the maintenance of it, with maybe a lid on what they could charge back to we agree to a level of what they can charge the council for it. That would save the council having to go and pick up the maintenance, and it would continue the funding, if you like, of the West Coast Cricket without setting a precedent for other grounds. And sorry, just one more thing. I do agree. It's completely separate, completely different to the other sports grounds around the place, even if it's by virtue of the fact that it's accessible from so many different areas and codes. So yeah, I'd be supporting Patrick on that one. Thank you.
Councillor Mora?
Yeah, I support Councillor McBride and Councillor McDonald on this as well. It seems if we're going to take some time to have a think about how we're going to fund this in the future, just to part fund it from our discretionary fund seems a little bit poor. I think we should fully fund it from our discretionary fund for this year if we're then going to have a discussion about what we might do going forward. The contestable fund, there's no guarantee, given the amount of people applying to that fund, that they would even get anything from it. So I would support a change or an amendment to fully fund it from the discretionary fund for this year, and then to have the discussion that Tim has said going forward about how we fund it in the future.
Sorry, Councillor Becker would just like to update there.
We've been through the reserves this afternoon. We've had a look at all the funding options available. Unfortunately, we just do not have the funding available in the discretionary fund to fund the full amount. Otherwise, we would have.
We tried. Sorry, Councillor Haddett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I ask Tim one question and then have a comment, please? Tim, given that you've told us there, and you've spent 37,000 on the tractor and mower, would you have bought the tractor and mower if you had thought the funding was going to stop?
We wouldn't have had a choice, Peter. The ground would still have to be mowed, and no one else was going to mow it for us. If we didn't accept the lease and we didn't buy the tractor and the mower, then we'd have to walk away from the ground. Then who would mow it? It's fundamental to playing cricket on a ground of that quality, of that surface.
And thank you. And I'm the same way, just to comment, I'm the same way as supporting Patrick and the other speakers. I believe the Arthur Fong Park is probably the best park we've got in town, and I've been down there. It's well used, and it's massively bigger than others. And I know the guys do a massive job down there of looking after it. And I think, the council's got, an obligation there somewhere to actually support these guys. If they walk away, it becomes unfinancial, we end up with another wilderness, Thank you.
CEO Paul Morris would like to just speak for a minute.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to give you a reminder of the background when we went through the long-term plan. This was made known to the council that we were going to move these things out of a fund into the contestable fund application. Effectively, this is a grant that you will be making rather than you paying for the mowing, because the lease is very, very clear in that the lease, the costs are the responsibility of the lessee, which in this case is the Cricket Association. We did what we did as a council because we were looking at a 9.99% rates rise, and you asked us to get it under 10%, which we did. So there is, as has been said, there is the discretionary fund is the only fund available, and there is another call on the discretionary fund while we work through another application. So this is all that we have left effectively. So that is why I guess Councillor Becker has made the suggestion of funding it for $2,000. There is no more money.
Sorry, Councillor Haywards next, and then Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's a rock and a hard place, this one. The lease is very clear, and we did go down that road of saying that all those organisations would have to go through the contestable grants fund. As a council, we did go down that road. So I'm torn between both parties. I can see the West Coast Cricket Association's point. I can see how popular the ground is, and I would like to support the comments made by the previous councillors, started with Councillor McBride. But if we haven't got the money, we haven't got the money. So and as Paul said, there's no other way we can fund it. So yeah, an interesting time. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, g'day. I agree with Murray, actually. It's really difficult, but there is a lot of other places out there that have bought lawnmowers and do it all themselves and don't ask for anything. So we either put the rates up and fund all the sport, or they have to try and find the money like everyone else has to, I'm afraid. It's not good, but we decided that. Thank you.
Councillor Becker.
The only other option we could look at would be to reduce the contestable fund to cover that extra amount, but we have gone out to people indicating that that is the amount available. So I don't personally consider that as an option.
Councillor McBride.
I just feel like we've actually blindsided these guys too with the fact that the way we've gone about it, and for myself personally too, that when something is getting funded or granted, whether we knew it in error or not, because it was going through. So from me personally, I thought, well, if that money wasn't even an issue because it was always getting paid, but then how did it get picked up? That's one thing that I'd like to know. And is there others out there that we're going to stumble across in the coming years that it's like we're going to cut them off as well and we don't have the money? If we don't have the money right now, I like the idea that Anton just said then about maybe cutting into that other fund so that they do get it. I cannot agree with, well, I know what you're saying, Pesty, Councillor Gibson, sorry, about the other sports groups and that, but we're talking about 3 sports that use this in one hit, you know, so there's the rugby, the soccer and the cricket and the multiple community people. So it's not a specialist sport as one, it's quite a few. So we're talking hundreds of people. Cheers.
We don't fund them.
CEO Paul Morris.
In answer to your question, Councillor McBride, it was picked up because we decided to put everything through the contestable fund. And that was when we went through every one of the things that we pay out to sports clubs and picked this up at that time. So that was part of the long-term plan process. So yeah, that was then, and I guess the lease September 2, 2020 was a continuation of the previous one. I guess I'll leave that at that.
Councillor Haddock.
If I could just ask Tim again whether he'd be, it might be a solution here, if the cricket club would be happy with Councillor Becker's proposal of $2,000 this time round.
So, Pete, as I understand that, then the proposal is that $2,000 would come from the contestable fund, and we would still have to apply to get that.
No, Tim, that would come from one of the council reserves, the discretionary fund, and then the rest could be applied to the contestable fund.
And going forward?
Well, that's a future decision for council to make.
And can that be still on the table with West Coast Cricket going forward?
If I can answer that, Tim, we would need to go through our annual plan process because obviously whatever money we grant, there's got to be a corresponding rates component to that. So the council gets to deal with all of that again. What are we, October, probably February, March of next year. So that would be a conversation then with the Cricket Association and the council.
Councillor McDonald, do you wish to speak? Oh, sorry, Tim, did you want to reply to that?
So as I understand it, then we'll get $2,000 from the discretionary fund. That's what's been offered, and we could apply for the difference through the contestable fund as well for this oncoming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that's quite fair. I don't want it to go off the table though, because I still believe, as I've already said, the nature of that ground and how council needs to look at it, you know, from a well-being for the community, and how it sits with the council's goals. I might add though, and I might be wrong, I might not, but in effect, you know, what we're saying is here, you're subsidising West Coast Cricket in the operation of the association by paying that fee. But I wonder how many sports that use the West Coast Recreation Centre are actually subsidised in their operation, and whether everything that's played in there pays for the true cost of that facility. And I'll leave that with you.
Thank you. Very good point. Councillor McDonald.
I think probably maybe Paul would know the answer to this, but or Tim probably would. Actually, does West Coast Cricket maintain that year round?
Yes.
Okay, so do is it the soccer and the rugby, do they chip in at any stage for this?
Or rugby's at the other end of the ground. That's Blaketown. But yeah, West Coast Soccer contribute to it as well. They pay a sublease to West Coast Cricket of $1,000.
I could add, the rugby club pays for their own ground maintenance. They have a lease with the council, but they pay for their own ground maintenance. It's not nearly as big as obviously the cricket club's area, but they pay for it. They don't get a grant from us.
Councillor Mora.
So for the Cricket Association, they would have to make a submission to our long-term or our annual planning process.
Oh, look, I think if council were, what I'd suggest we do is we actually re-review what we've done, because it's not just going to affect the Cricket Association. This is a general, should we be doing this for sports clubs who utilise council grounds? So I think you need to come to a position on that then would feed into the annual plan.
Because I think there's an issue around maintenance of council assets that even though we're leasing them, and the cost of actually maintaining them maybe being a little bit too high for associations to be able to bear. But I would say to Tim, there are some other funding agencies besides the contestable fund. The West Coast Community Trust opens on the 1st of October. You might be able to apply to that. Also COGS and maybe the Tyndall Foundation.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Mora. With those funds, they require quotes and things like that, where apart from the equipment that we buy, everything is done voluntary. The person that drives the tractor is paid an honorarium for it. It's hard to get those quotes. You don't know your fuel costs until you've bought your fuel.
The West Coast Community Trust is a little bit more flexible than that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions or comments?
Can I just make Tim Brownlee, not to Councillor Mora, but to Tim, the contestable fund closes on the 30th. So for the balance, you'd need to get the application in pretty quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I can do that tomorrow.
Cool.
Thank you. Okay, shall we put it to the vote? Are there any more questions or comments? So all those in favour, please raise your hands.
Could I just ask a bit of clarity here, Your Worship? We are going to Councillor Becker's second amendment, were we? Which did it get a seconder for the $2,000? Is that correct?
Yes, we are, Councillor Haddock. So,
did that have
the amended, Councillor Becker, can you read that out again, please?
Council approves the funding of $2,000 the discretionary fund for this year only, with the balance requested to go to the contestable fund.
And that was seconded by Her Worship.
Councillor Mora.
Just a question. If we reject this motion, then what happens next? Paul.
If you reject this motion, then there is no motion, and I guess we would continue to discuss it, and people could put a motion on the table that would continue on until you reached agreement. Or you could turn around and say, we need to go away and come back with an option to fund it, because we haven't thought beyond the discretionary fund how that might work. So what I would suggest is that couldn't be decided today, because we wouldn't have the information to allow you to make the decision.
Councillor Haddock?
No, I was just ready to vote, Your Worship.
Oh. Okay, so all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Can you see the agenda?
Patrick's the only one that's not.
Okay, so all those not in favour, please raise your hands. That's Councillor McBride, and he'd like his vote recorded. Okay, any more questions or comments? No, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so tuning back to Government Three Waters reforms.
You can go through the rest of the agenda if you like, Madam Mayor, in order now. We can do that one last.
Okay, tuning back to page 19, Mayor's report. And the recommendation is that the Mayor's activity report for the month of August 2021 be received. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Green, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor McDonald?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, hi, thank you, Your Worship. I see that on the 12th you met with the Life Education Trust, and in last Thursday's newspaper there was an article stating that the DWC had pulled their 30k funding from the trust. Did you have any indication at that time when you met with them that they weren't going to continue their funding? I find it totally unbelievable and intolerable that the DWC, not WDC, DWC would let down the youth and families of the West Coast in this way. What are your thoughts about it?
I think that it was quite a surprise, but I think it was a surprise more along the lines that we got told to apply for more from the CEO than we normally would have. And then he appeared in a video clip that he filmed a month sort of prior to the decision. And, you know, I guess there was a little bit of hope there that with all those actions that we would have, you know, been funded. But yeah, certainly the trust does, you know, not just do year 8s and all primary school children or up to year 8s, but it does do a lot of work and sends inspirational speakers into the high school and into, we do have seminars at night time sometimes for parents on drug issues or keeping your children safe for internet use and things like that. So it was quite disappointing to the trust, and it does put it in a little bit of jeopardy this year, just because I guess with COVID, the way that things are at the moment, that it's very hard to be asking businesses for funding.
Thanks, Tanya.
Are there any more questions or comments there? No. Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Against?
No, I don't think you do.
Motion carried. Thank you, Peter. You're a bit delayed on the hand. I assume that you were for that. Okay. So turning to page 23, Town Square and Tainui Service Street outcome of trial closures. What's happening there? Okay, so everyone's on page 22, 23. So I would like to actually congratulate the staff on this report, because they actually did a very good job, and it was a very interesting read that the trial closure and the information that we did receive over that time did actually give us a very clear sort of option, I feel. It is disappointing that the community didn't utilise the town square throughout the closures, and that council put most of the events on, but all those events were very successful. So thank you again to the staff that did put those events on. Realistically, there isn't going to be many events in our town square over winter, and you know, even though it has been sort of addressed by the community that they would like so, but with the weather and the so forth, it is not really a realistic option. So if the safety issues can be addressed and to help mitigate with people's safety concerns, the major reason for closing it permanently would avoid some legal issues in trying to do that. So if the staff can come up with some good options, but hopefully not like we have outside the sort of town clock, and we have something that's a little bit more community public friendly or traffic friendly there. So the recommendation is that 1, the report be received, the report Town Square and Tainui Street Shared Street Trial Closure Report be received, and 2, council does not permanently close part Tainui Street from Mawhera Quay to Mackey Street or turn it into a pedestrian mall, as the evidence does not support this, but instead continues to close the road for planned events only. Council instructs its staff to undertake an investigation into options to increase the safety for the users of the town square, Tainui Shed Street area, which includes encouraging adherence to the posted speed limit and reducing the amount of vehicles using the area. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'd be more than happy to that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Haddock. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Haddock.
I think this is a good common sense decision. I was pretty concerned when I read that the sole reason for actually doing the trial was considering its permanent closure, whereas I thought we were doing the trial to actually see whether it worked for closing on certain dates. Now, like I spoke once before about this, we thrashed it out, we consulted, we had the pop-ups. The whole proposal here was to have the town square on the corner where the Geesking building was, the small corner, and Tainui Street becoming a shared street. And that was the whole idea of the concept. And it was really thrashed out. And I remember bringing to council the boxes of papers where we went through years of the consultation. I've seen so many people seeing malls closed around the place. You know, New Brighton Mall was a disaster, busiest mall in the country at one stage. And the same with Albert Street. I remember, we actually, Albert Street was a great street, it was the most vibrant street in town, and council buggered that by closing it. The other thing is we would probably been up for legal action because there's several properties in the middle of Tainui Street if that was closed, one being the Jade Place and the other one being the other part of the grassed area, which belongs to the Mawhiram Corporation. You would actually be locking them out. So I think that's a good decision. And I know people are concerned about speed, but if you want to see an accident waiting to happen, you should go up by the Cora School, I know, people do go over 10 k's an hour, but that's this, on item 3 or the part 3, council can take some measures to try and slow that traffic down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haddock. We do have a letter tabled there that Debbie's just going to read out from Catherine from Shades of Jade. You may not have, you all received it, but you may not have had time to read it there. So,
okay. To the councillors gathered, thank you for considering the report detailing the findings of the Upper Tainui Shared Street summer weekend trial closures. We agree with the summary and the recommendations presented. The way forward for us is dependent on the decision made here. Kind regards, Catherine and Warren Willett, Shades of Jade.
Thank you, Debbie.
We know what Debbie's reading.
And yes, thank you to them for providing the information to council to help us make that decision. And I've also talked to the art gallery and to Stephen Penny, who also seem relatively happy with the recommendation there. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Hay?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I tend to agree with Councillor Haddock's observation. We did consult with the public and we made the decision accordingly. I find it quite confusing that a lot of the people that have vented their frustration at various times, mostly on social media, are saying that it should be closed, but they don't go and use it when it is closed. So I think we have made the right sensible decision to keep it open, and as Councillor Haddock said, so I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. That was pretty much, well, there was quite a very strong movement from the public that wanted it closed, so it was good to look at the option and get that evidence. So Councillor Gibson?
Oh, I totally agree with the last two councillors, and just remember it was always a street, and it's pretty hard to change that.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any more questions or comments there? Councillor McBride?
I just want to add that it was good to see that after a few trials, there was cones everywhere, signs getting knocked over and blown over, but we actually spent some time to rectify all that and put in the right things in place, which seem to work well now. But initially it was all over the show, but no, good job.
Thank you. Any more comments there? And I say again, thank you to the staff that have been putting on the events in the town square in the summer, because they have been making it more vibrant and quite an attractive place to be. So that was the thing for the town square as well. So it has really done its purpose and will continue to. Okay, we'll take that to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Against? Motion carried. Turning to page 46. Land sale proposal, Oxford Street, Taylorville, and the recommendation is from Councillor Haddock.
I'm just getting to the page, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Head. Right, and here we go. The recommendation is that 1, the report proposed land sale Oxford Street, Taylor will be received, and 2, council approve the sale of the land subject to the following conditions. A, the sale of public land is carried out strictly in accordance with statutory requirements. B, the service lane is shown in attachment 2 of the report be retained for council use. And C, no objection being received from the other adjoining landowner at 12 Oxford Street. And D, the land to be sold shall be amalgamated to one title, with the applicant's current property being lots 54 and 55 DP 80.
Thank you. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Gibson, thank you.
That motion's not finished already.
Peter, you didn't read
motion.
out points G, F and G.
There's a few more.
Right.
Keep going.
So
Read that.
we'll go to E. All costs excluding but not limited to valuation report, purchase of the land, survey costs, any easements, advertising and legal costs be met by the applicant. If the final proposed survey plan be approved by the infrastructure manager. And G, the sale and purchase agreement to be executed by the chief executive. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Councillor Haddock. Are you still prepared to second that, Councillor Gibson? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Gibson?
How much land does the council own? I mean, I didn't know about this block. It's 57 hectares. That's a fairly big piece of land. Could ask Paul that question, could I, please?
You can answer that question, Councillor Gibson, but I will have to get back to you on that, unless Catherine knows the answer. But I have seen some seriously large tomes that list all the land we own. So exactly how much or where it is, Catherine will have all of that detail.
Sorry, not available right now, but we can get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments there? Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Against? Motion carried. Turning to page 90, miscellaneous items. Documents signed. The recommendation is that the following documents be ratified. 1, deed of sublease between Grey District Council and Richmond Glass 2014 Limited, being land at 33 Lord Street, Greymouth, part section 197 and 198, block 30, Greymouth. And 2, lease of conservation reserve under council controlled management between Grey District Council and Reeve Fletcher, being land at 10 Hawkins Street, Rapahoe Reserve 1000, known as the Rapahoe Camping Ground. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Becker. Are there any questions or comments there? All right. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Motion carried. Okay, so now we're going, moving back to the Government 3 water reforms before we go to the departmental reports. We have Chris Purchase from Tonkin and Taylor who is coming in to speak to us. Is he in here?
No, he'll be there after 5 minutes, so we can talk
okay.
about that.
Right, Paul's going to talk then. Are you going to talk, or are we going to go to the reports?
I can talk. Don't know whether I can talk for 10 minutes, but
should we go to them?
Well, let's go. If we go to the group management report, get that done, and then I can do a bit of an introduction.
Okay, still not here. So moving on to page 92 to the group management report. The recommendation is that the report be received. Find the recommendation page. The group management report be received and the information noted. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Haddock. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Mora?
Yeah, I note the first item about the increased cost from the emissions trading scheme. You know, what's our long-term plan around this? Are we going to explore other options for heating the pool? Are we going to look at, you know, wood or electricity or something like that? Because if ETS is going to carry on increasing, when are we going to get to the point where this might be unviable? And I'm wondering if it's worth having a report prepared to actually evaluate different ways of heating the pool and the different costs involved in doing that.
Diane, can you please answer that?
We've actually allowed for money in year 4 to deal with some of the issues that have arisen through the climate change, and it actually includes looking at different energy options for the rec centre.
Thank you. There was also plans for that in our long-term plan, wasn't there, Paul, that was addressed that we would be looking at options and the future in those areas?
Yeah.
Just can I jump in just while we're talking about this? It might be worthwhile reaching out to the DHB because we've just gone through the same process there in terms of heating the hospital, moving away from the coal burner to something different. So they've done this. So it's, sort of going through it all again, it might be worthwhile hooking up with them and finding out what they ended up with in terms of the process they went through and how they ruled out the other ways of doing it.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson?
I note on all the reports, a lot of stuff has been held up with the staff involvement with the 3 waters, which we have to do. But I wonder what it's cost the ratepayer. At the end of the day, it's the ratepayer's got to pay for it. We should send the government a bill, I reckon, because it's out of control. I mean, we're the ones that have to answer to the ratepayers, and they just seem to do what they want. It's not fair, really.
It would be a token. There would be obviously no intention of the government, I suspect, paying the bill. But having said that, to actually calculate the accurate time and effort that we've put into this project would take staff away from doing what they need to do to catch up effectively. So, I mean, we could certainly send them a bill, but how much, or I mean,
if it happens or not, Paul, it's still cost, isn't it? And it's delayed some other things.
It's been a mission to put together the initial information, and you will remember that came straight after the annual report, but just before the long-term plan was needed to go out, and the team worked very, very hard to gather that information, which was then sent to DIA, which they then got wrong, and came back with something that we couldn't verify. The effort that the team has put in to, I guess, try and verify the government information, and then just try and understand the proposal has been significant. So it has been a long project.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. As I wrote over the weekend, 710 million, and that's not to mention all of the staff time. And then we have all the meetings that the mayors and councillors have had to travel to around the country that have also costed, and we've come not much better off. So we certainly agree. What was your second question there?
If I could ask some questions about the dredge. What is the hold up with the certification of the radios? And could we get every month a thing on how many hours it's operated in the future, please?
Do you like that one, Catherine?
Yes, we can do that. It hasn't been operating at the moment because of the conditions. The radio has since been certified, so it is 100% operational now, but we couldn't operate during lockdown. It wasn't an essential service. And at the moment, the river conditions haven't been ideal for them to be operating the dredge.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get the report every month, did you say? Sorry?
Yes, I did.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Hay just had a question, or just Councillor Hay?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just referring back to sending an invoice to the government on reimbursing us for time and money spent. I'm sure they will just say opt in, and you will receive. So yeah, that's a decision we'll make at a later date, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Becker?
Just one question, Catherine. We discussed this earlier on today, with the MBI, the funding for the 3 bridges, seeing they haven't approved that variance. What have we got in line for a plan B on that?
Are you asking me or Catherine?
I'll ask him also, Catherine. Yeah.
Hang on. We would be looking at utilising some of the carry forward, Catherine, from the roading rate to cover the local share, I think. But you may have a better idea on that.
Potentially, but we are going to apply for the variation in the hope that they will approve it. And if not, we're going to have to do some serious checking to see if we can fund it. It may end up being a further loan to complete the project, but we don't know at this stage. We want to find out for sure about whether we can get a variation approved or not, but they're not looking positive about it.
Has that put any of the bridges on hold at the moment?
No.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. We did have a meeting with the CBG group about a fortnight ago on the entranceway project that has been having some programs and is well over the expected timeframes. Can we have an update on if we've had any progress since then, Gian, please?
I'm sorry, I don't have any other updates to give. We're trying to put together the tender spec, and there's quite a few engineering problems we need to iron out before we can put that out.
Thank you. Has the dredge in Coulson, is Mel with us today? Has the dredge in Coulson Road and the road been resolved, and has the developer been informed, or is there a conclusion on that yet?
Yeah, Infrastructure Services Manager here. There was a meeting today I wasn't able to attend, but last meeting we talked about it. He was going to fill in on the sections, and we're going to leave the section under the road and just monitor it in the meantime. There's no subsidence or slumping at this stage in the road section.
Thank you. So the developer's quite happy, and we have that, and that's resolved really then to be continuing on with his work.
Yeah, as for the last meeting I attended, yes.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments there? Okay, we will put it to the vote. So all those in favour of receiving the report, pop your hand up, please. Against? Motion carried. So do we have Chris Purchase in the waiting room yet, where it's 4:58, so we've still got till 5?
Yeah, I can kick off.
Okay,
If you like,
Paul's going to kick off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to apologise for the the fact that you only got the major part of the report today. I was waiting for and hoping that Chris would work on it over the weekend and give me something that I could send to you before today's meeting, so you had a chance to have a bit of a read. So I'm not sure who's read what with regards to the proposal. But Chris, I think, has laid it out pretty, I'll just dig it out here. Where are we? He's what we're in this 8 week, as you know, we're in the 8 week period of coming up with feedback for the government so that they can input into their decision making and refining of the final Three Waters reform proposal. We were to take the time to go through and understand what the proposal was asking, and, as I said, try and refine the output so that it was the best should we decide to opt into the proposal. Now, this is not a decision at this point in time to opt in or opt out. The government, there is a list of suggested points that we should be considering in the back of that report that we should be taking to government. And they consist of things, around local contracting and how that works, response times and the like. So really that's the initial proposed report. I think we need to actually, as a council, put together a letter with our feedback to the government, which includes those items, but also includes things such as this is, too rushed. It's back to front in terms of dealing with the future of local government at a later stage, but dealing with the water infrastructure, which is a huge part of local government now. What the other reforms in terms of RMA are going to do, all of those things. So I would suggest that I guess there's a resolution coming up that we actually have a further meeting where we can actually discuss this. We can discuss it today, but you can't make any decisions on it because it's a late item. But have a discussion today and a decision making meeting at a later date, but not too far into the future because we missed the cutoff. So Chris is probably the one that we probably wanted to talk to, but I'm happy to see what questions I can answer in the meantime.
So we've got Chris will be coming through. He shouldn't be too far away.
Thank you.
He could have been 2 seconds.
It was a wait for him to get through there.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
And listen to what he has to say.
Can I just ask a question while we're waiting for that to get set up? Is there any feedback on the webinars and the information sessions that we have provided for the public, how they were received?
I can answer that. I did send something out today, Councillor Hay, with regards to the Three Waters feedback. We reached a maximum of 29,691 people on Facebook. Obviously, not all of them ours, but 2,465 people were engaged. We had 56 shares. The webinars, we did 3 of them. We reached 5,499 people. 760 people were engaged. 16 were shares, and 20 comments came out of that. 6.4% of connected water users provided feedback. That's 330 odd distinct individual comments or people taking the time to provide feedback. which meant that 96.7% of that feedback was opposed to the government's three water reform. Now, this is not a formal consultation. This is it's almost it's just a feedback session, a gauging of what it might be. I'm actually hopeful that the government will still allow for a public consultation, a proper public consultation. But I'm not sure on that yet.
Chris is not in there yet. How are we going, Debbie? Have we got Chris through yet? No? Are there any questions or comments on those figures? Pretty much what everyone was expecting. Councillor Gibson?
It's actually a lot more than I expected. I didn't think there'd be that much interest in it, to be honest.
It seems from feedback around the country of those councils that have put out some engagement documents that there has been quite a lot of uptake around the country. So it's quite, more than what's in the LTPs normally from some councils and what they've said. Councillor McBride?
I just want to say, I was at a house last night, a couple that have moved into the town from Gisborne, and they are so impressed with the information that was supplied regarding the three waters. And they said in their region, they've only been here for a couple of weeks, and they said back home in Gisborne, there was nothing like what they've seen here, and they're very impressed with the information received and put out to the public. So yeah, good job by all the staff.
Yes, I think they did a very good job. Okay, Chris is in here with us now. Welcome, Chris. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Hello, everyone.
Hello again. Thank you for coming tonight. The floor is yours to address us on...
Sorry, Chris, I'll just let you know what information I have sent to the council so that... so I sent them that draft statement of proposal, the version 1.4.
Yep.
So the council's got that. I have sent to the council the latest update from our feedback stats, so they've got that as well. I've done a brief covering report which introduces your report, and there'll be a recommendation on that to hold a further meeting. But that's the information that I've sent so far, Chris.
Fantastic. And first of all, I have to apologise to councillors because I've got a draft email that somehow got lost on Friday night that I was supposed to send to Paul. So you're supposed to get an updated report. So my humble apologies for that. But what you've seen is largely what was going to be sent. So look, I guess there's probably a couple of things that I can share with you in terms of how this process has been running. I guess really my writing instructions are to let you know what I'm seeing from some of the other councils that we're assisting, and just generally the commentary that's going on around the country. And then really I'm very happy to answer any questions from what I am seeing. So I'm not the font of all knowledge, as I'm sure you're aware, but very happy to share my perspectives. So I guess, as you're probably aware, there's certainly councils right across the country have sought a lot of detail on proposals that have been presented that are pretty high level. So we've got a lot of information that's at principles level, but a lot of detail that is missing. And I guess partly that's just the nature of where we are in the process. What that means is that it's actually quite difficult to understand what the impact will be for your community. So what we've been focusing on and providing assistance to councils right across the country is really on where some of those gaps are and how you might go about addressing those. But perhaps it's first of all just worth noting that there's really a few areas that people are concerned about that I'm seeing right across the country. So one is around this regional representative structure. And often it's talked about as a governance structure, but it's probably pretty important to remember that the representative structure is about representatives from within an entity membership appointing an appointments panel to then appoint a competency-based board for these new water service entities. So it's not really a governance structure in terms of participation of elected members or iwi. It's around actually setting up the governance structure, if that makes sense. And a lot of the concerns that I've seen expressed have been around the lack of ability to direct or exercise any real governance through that structure. And I think that's correct. I don't think that structure is set up in that way. But what is really important to actually think about is that there's actually a number of other mechanisms that will force or obligate, at least at a principles level, the entity to work alongside you to deliver outcomes for your community. And really the view that I'm starting to form is those mechanisms are, if anything, more important than the representative structure, certainly in the medium to long term. And these mechanisms, you might have seen within the nice complex diagram that we've got, that there's a number of plans or strategic plans that the entity will need to have regard to. So one of those is a spatial plan, which is something that's coming through the Resource Management Act reforms, will be developed at a regional level, and basically sets out how things will develop both from a residential but also industrial commercial land use type of perspective. So that's really important, that whoever's providing free water services is really bought into and supportive of that. So actually enabling you to deliver what you've agreed with your community. Importantly, that's a regional document, as I said, not a local document, although the details are still being worked through. There's also a thing called a statement or a letter of expectation that comes from the regional representative group. It's not entirely clear how that might be developed, but that's a little bit like a statement of intent. And we would expect that would probably have some level of engagement with all of the owner local authorities involved. So that's going to be really reasonably high level, but pretty important as well. There's also a statement from iwi called a Te Mana Te Waia statement, and that's going to be really important in terms of setting out iwi values at an entity-wide, but also at a local level. And it's been made pretty clear that could be right down to a iwi or even hapu level or runanga level. So that mechanism, again, is going to be something that the entity will have to have regard to. And what hasn't been stated explicitly but seems likely is that also the remainder of your LTP, if you like, so the non-Three Waters component of your LTP, will in some cases be very reliant on Three Waters services provision, both existing or new. So we would expect that there will be some interaction between your long-term plan and the investment plans for the Three Waters entity. The final piece of the puzzle, and this becomes really important for new investments, is the investment prioritisation framework that the entity needs to put together. So this is how do we decide, when we've got a limited pot of cash, where we're going to spend that cash. So is it better for us to invest in an improved level of service in Greymouth versus Hokitika versus Christchurch versus Invercargill? So that framework is obviously going to be absolutely critical to understand, and a lot of thought will need to be put into making sure that does balance those competing priorities. So it's not a simple suite of documents, but those documents, those strategic plans, are going to become extremely important for that entity in terms of planning the way forward. And I guess from the information that we have at the moment, those are going to probably be the most critical things for you to keep a very close eye on. And are the ways that you won't have the ability to direct these new entities, but have a strong influence on the way that they operate. I think kind of related to that, some of the other things that we've been grappling with is just this, the ability for you to work alongside this large new entity to deliver outcomes for your community. So how will your priorities be compared with the priorities of your neighbouring local authorities or local authorities in other parts of the South Island in the context of Entity D? Related to that are things like delivering not only Three Waters services, but with a view to what does that mean for economic development in a much broader sense for your community, for job opportunities. If you've got a local contractor who's delivering Three Waters services for your organisation, what does it mean for them if all of those services are being procured in some form of centralised fashion?
I think those are probably the key things that we've raised. You've read through the briefing document. Probably the simplest thing is to leave the floor open for questions, and we can have a conversation around anything else that's with that you're concerned about or would like more clarity on.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Gibson.
That's real good, thanks, Chris. But how do we decide on something if we don't know all these things? It's almost impossible. We can't
Absolutely.
see what, I mean, you've just told us some information that we've never heard before.
So, look, I guess a couple of things. So at the moment, government hasn't asked for local authorities to make decisions. They've asked for feedback on some proposals. And as I said, those proposals are actually largely at a principles level rather than the detail. So you're absolutely right. There's not enough information to make an evaluation of the model as it's currently being presented. I think so. One of the things I've been doing, in addition to working alongside the West Coast councils and a number of others as well, is participating in a technical working group that's been pulled together by Local Government New Zealand. So bringing together a number of consultants who are doing similar work. And so we've had the opportunity to meet once a week and also get some feedback from DIA, who are driving the reform work within government. And what's been really clear, certainly over the last few weeks, is they're bringing in this feedback and they've got a whole lot of thinking to go away and do. So you'll be aware that they've already made a public commitment to do some more work on that representative group kind of governance framework. They're also doing some work around economic regulation, which is going to be a really critical part of the picture, and we haven't seen any detail on. So there's a number of areas where there's additional work to do before the model will be finalised.
It's a bit of a worry when Talkback Radio today was talking about jobs advertised in the Three Water space.
Yeah, I haven't been looking, so I didn't spot it. But I mean, I could imagine, certainly from if you're sitting in a consulting area, there's no question there's a lot of work to be done. So it could have been that. And I know that there are, in some entities, there is actually some active work going on, starting to think about establishing these new entities. So, for example, Hamilton City Council have taken their Three Waters staff and put them into a separate unit with a view to that then easily transitioning into a new entity. So it may be something like that.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No? Okay, should we recommend?
Got to have more questions than that.
Yeah, I know.
I think we've done quite a lot of reading and we've had quite a lot of information on this topic. But okay, so I'll put the recommendation forth from Councillor Gibson.
Muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Right, ready?
Yep.
The suggested recommendation is that 1, the report government Three Water reforms be received and the contents noted. And 2, that in light of the government's deadline of 30th September 2021 to provide feedback on the Three Waters reform proposal, Council calls an extraordinary meeting for the 29th of December to discuss and decide its course of action in response to the government's Three Waters reform proposal.
I'll second that. Are there any more questions or comments? Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Against? Motion carried. I will now move that we go into confidential. Councillor Becker seconding.
Yeah.
And thank you all who attended today. It was